Okay, we're live and having a conversation here with Mike Eidsaune, who's a old friend of Aging 2.0. He's been with us since really almost the beginning of our journey, and catching up with him from his base in his subterranean man cave or podcasting hub from Ohio. And Kelly's just joined on again as a collective partner, and we're happy to have them on board. And they've announced a very interesting acquisition of caregiving.com. So I'll just ask Mike to introduce himself for those who don't know him and the Kelly story, and then what's happening with caregiving.com.
Yeah, gosh, this is cool, Stephen. I'll tell you what, we're like the OGs at this point, right? I mean, we're talking circa 2014, 15 maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's been a while that we've known each other and we've been connected. So the background obviously goes back to maybe a year before that, but we got engaged with Aging 2.0 really early on with Carely as a consumer app for caregivers. And then as we sort of progressed and turned and pivoted and grew up, we eventually sort of found our place within sort of the broader long-term care ecosystem and found a very niche role within the family engagement, sort of family communication space within that ecosystem, and have done really, really well. Our company has seen a lot of success. We've had a lot of adoption, both nationally and internationally, on the Carely product. And that really extends in two directions. So Carely Inc. is sort of broken into two parts. On one side, we've got the family app, which supports family caregivers. And on the other side, we've got sort of our enterprise model, which helps long-term care, healthcare organizations really communicate with those families, make sure that there's transparent information, automatic information, and that communication and engagement can happen efficiently across the organization. So we've done really well. We've had a lot of luck timing wise with COVID and a pandemic sort of hitting in the beginning of the year, and us being fully deployed obviously helped quite a bit because, obviously the industry needed our help and needed things to help communication and transparency happen more efficiently.
So how many buildings are you in now?
Oh, we've got somewhere north of 700 locations sort of using the platform, 20 to 30,000 families any day of the week sort of using the tool as well. So that's a number we're really proud of.
So just to clarify, just clarify on the family app, does it work if people are not in residential care? Could they also use it for their family themselves as just a family communication tool, or is it specifically if they're designed to have somebody in residential care? No,
and that's an important point. So the family app itself can be utilized by a family in any setting, any scenario, any connection. It's independent, effectively, of the Carely community platform, and part of that is just because of where we started and what we wanted to do was support caregivers. But the second piece is by design. By keeping the app independent and sort of family controlled, a family can sort of utilize it through the care continuum. And that's really important. I think it's one of the things that really differentiates our product in the B2B space, is that a family can utilize Carely at home with their loved one, caring for an individual, but then they can continue using it as they move through that provider continuum. So from home health to IL to AL to SNF to hospice, it obviously never goes in that order exactly, but they can continue using it through that platform and be uninterrupted. So by design, it stays independent.
So it's like a sort of care record that goes across multiple different locations and
and then providers sort of come and go and enter as they sort of engage with that family along that journey.
Mm-hmm. Great. So then on the benefits for the providers and the AL and the IL who are using it, so what do they get out of using it? And what's their business model associated with it as well?
Well, and it's been interesting. It's really been that part of the business has been a long evolution, right? Trying to figure out what that value proposition has been tough. And part of the reason is because different segments of the market value family engagement, family relationships differently. Yes, they all care and they want families to be involved and included, but depending on the setting, sometimes families are more engaged, sometimes they're less, sometimes it's a short-term stay, sometimes it's a long-term stay. So depending on the organization, but really in a nutshell, what Carely Community, the B2B platform, what it does is it enables an organization to have a really meaningful digital relationship with a family. So that means they can share updates, they can connect it to their EMR so that automatic information can flow to the family, lab reports, ADLs, you name it, allergy intolerances, all that stuff. But I can, as a community provider, I can send communication to the family in a way that they'll engage with it, enjoy it, and consume it, and without taking up a whole bunch of time. I don't have to rely on phone calls or emails or whatever else we're doing. I can use this platform solely. And then beyond that, you can do things that you'd expect, like community-wide posting. You can send out a community-wide message to everybody in the organization. You can communicate internally with your other team members. You can do HIPAA-compliant private chat as well. So there's a lot of like bells and whistles that we've added to it over the years to add value, but it's really mostly a relationship management tool.
Very cool. So what's next for Carely as a business?
Yeah, so we decided to spice things up a little bit this year. Because of some of the success we had in late 2019, and because of a relationship I had developed and a strategic partnership we were working on with caregiving.com, we actually decided to acquire that business. And really the goal there and the vision there was, Carely Inc. As a company, as a mission-oriented company, our goal and our focus is on family caregivers. Ultimately, they're the end user. They're the ones that, everything we do on the provider side, everything we do on the technology side, it's meant to impact them positively. But as we sort of stepped back and looked at, what we had done over the past 2 years, really, and, the impact we were having, we were sort of left sort of underwhelmed in a way, even though we were having success, because being really good at communication and transparency in senior living and long-term care still only gives you sort of an addressable market of caregivers of this much. It's a small amount. It's a minority percentage of the caregivers out there that need help. And so, we as a team, me as a board member, sort of made the pitch to our investors and to our company to say, hey, I think we can do more. We just need to position ourselves a little bit differently and sort of broaden our scope. And with this sort of opportunity to acquire caregiving.com, it's exactly what it did. So for us, caregiving.com represents an opportunity to really engage people much more broadly. Whether it's connecting someone to an article or finding a service provider in their area, caregiving.com is going to have everything in it from A to Z that a caregiver might need, regardless of their setting, regardless of their care situation, regardless of their care recipient's situation.
And that's ultimately because caregiving.com has been around quite a long time, right? And it's
20 plus years. Yeah, 20 plus years. And
it was
the community is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did it get started?
I think in 1996, Denise Brown had founded it. Back then, I think the sole purpose of it was very simple. It was just, she wanted to write articles and create content for caregivers, much like herself. I think part of the challenges she faced as it evolved and it became not only full-time for her, but the community grew and sort of the expectation of the website grew as well. I think she really struggled to find a clear path for the website. So what you saw over the last 5 years of caregiving.com was it started to take a left and right, kind of a zigzag, what the focus was on the website. So if you went to the old website, a month or two ago, you probably were met with a little bit of a confusing user experience. Like, who is this website talking to? And that was because she had competing business models. But what was really valuable to us was the community. The 20 years of building a community and nurturing a community of people and really being open to letting people blog and letting people comment and letting people post questions and chat on the website developed a really, really incredible and priceless community that still exists today that we want to continue to support. And so we're sort of clawing back a lot of the other stuff and really focusing on the caregiver portion, the family caregiver portion, connection, support, guidance, all that stuff.
One of the interesting challenges that we hear a lot is the overwhelmed family caregiver who doesn't really know where to start. And one of the sort of hypotheses that a lot of us in the space have is that there is a sort of underconsumption of products and services that actually could do a good job. It's not about sort of selling people stuff that they don't need, especially when they're a caregiver and they are perhaps a sandwich generation and they're just overwhelmed. But there are things which can save them time, save them money, and provide better experience for that. Is that the kind of way that you're thinking about helping people who are sort of struggling and overwhelmed?
Absolutely. And I two things to this. The first is as a caregiver myself, 3 or 4 times over now, I can attest to this. Being in the industry, I didn't know about some of the tools and technology that existed out there until someone just randomly says to me, hey, you should think about this tool or this medication device or whatever. So yes, I think that identification of systems and support and services and tools is absolutely critical. But I think the other piece of this is, and this is really sort of the backbone of our thesis, why we think that the time is now, is that you sort of have 3 places online today for caregivers. On one end, you've got these, sort of the Goliaths, the AARPs, the Alzheimer's associations, the cancer societies of America. Those folks who are highly focused on one thing, their niche, and they do a good job of content, but it's very focused on that niche. So if you're a caregiver and you know what you're looking for, you can find your place there. But again, really mostly just content, long form. The second piece is you've got this sort of grassroots, like blog type, diary type content, and there's lots of them, lots of these caregiver support sites out there, and they're beautifully done, and the content is good, but it's repetitive. It's repeated across 100 different blog style WordPress sites out there today. And then the third, and the one I despise the most, are the aggregators. They're the folks like A Place for Mom and caring.com. They have, and to no fault of their own, they've done incredibly well. Their businesses are incredibly successful, but they've really done something that doesn't work in many other industries or verticals today, which is hold information hostage, and do a really, really incredible job on SEO to make sure that those placements and those search rankings sort of always are optimized. But for example, if I'm a caregiver today and I go to look for an answer to my problem, and that could be senior living, it could be product or service to keep mom at home longer, 9 times out of 10, that search is going to point you to one of those sites. And then 9 times out of 10, the answer is most likely going to be, you should get your mom into a senior living facility. By the way, that information is just sitting on the other side of this opt-in form. That to me it's a really unfortunate sort of result of just, big business and the referral fee sort of winning the day. But as you talk to the industry and you talk to families who've experienced that, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 3 out of 4, 3 out of 4 folks just do not have a good experience there. And it's unfortunate because I think
many of the senior living providers are also not enthusiastic about it as well. The challenge you obviously are going to find, though, is that it's been working and they've got money, and so they can pay for the placement. So how do you compete with your virtuous, Mike is the good guy coming along and giving people, the real truth, presumably not ripping anybody off, just a bit of a, an emotive word. But the idea is, how do you beat a business model that is proven effective, even if it's maybe not particularly to your liking?
Yeah. And so it's a couple different ways. And some of it is just simple math. One is you admit that you're never going to have the same budget that they do. So you're not going to be able to buy your placement. You're not going to be able to beat them at the Google ad spots. But, the reason they can compete, say, against the senior living providers' efforts locally is because they've got the database, right? They've got the data, they've got the aggregation behind the site. So their SEO ranked incredibly highly on an organic search basis. They've got all of the local listings, they've got all of the articles and content focused on that locality. So where we can do what, say, like a local care or a local provider can't, is we've got that same set of data. You know, we've got the same database, we've got all the providers listed, we've got the content that's sort of been added and created for a local audience, so we can rank very highly there. And then I think the third piece is, it's just, you've got to sort of double down on that user experience. You've got to flip the model upside down and say, no, we're not going to do referral fees. No, we're not going to do listing fees. We're going to create a marketplace where provider and caregiver can find one another, and we're not going to stand in between those two people. And I think if we make that very well known and we make that user experience delightful, I think more and more you'll find that people will opt for that. Providers will opt to use and spend more time and energy focusing on their profile page on caregiving.com than they will with sort of optimizing the leads on Place for Mom. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think those sites are going to go away. And I think primarily the reason they won't is because the ownership structure in senior living is very disconnected. So for example, if I am a private equity owner of a 143 building portfolio and I need to see my census go up in the Northeast because we're looking at potentially selling off that portion of our business, I can very easily go and pull that lever in the Northeast with my partnership with the Place for Mom and sort of spin those move-ins up. I can spin those leads up in that market. The only problem is, you know, how many people, because of that machine, because of that lever you pulled, of the 3 people that maybe moved in, how many people did you have to piss off with a poor experience to get them? And I think that's where we sort of see ourselves looking at the market a little bit differently is, you know, to get 3 move-ins, a Place for Mom has to piss off 7 people. And it's just math.
Interesting. So to go back to your marketplace model, are you going to be offering only senior housing options, or will there be any other kinds of products and services available for people who need them?
I'm glad you asked. So our definition of provider with caregiving.com is wide open. The way we look at a provider now is anybody who provides support services or care for a recipient or for a family. So you can look at that a million different ways, but providers could be senior living, they could be geriatrician, pharmacy, local area agency on aging, association, provider, product person. I mean, it doesn't matter. In our world, a provider will be anybody who shows support for the family caregiver and has something to offer. So companies, so
it's a very
profiling
broad
startup companies and things, everybody.
Very broad spectrum of potential services. How will you allow people to sort of filter and navigate? Because the big question is, in terms of the metrics that we're using, they're not very good in this space, and especially non-financial metrics, something that we've been looking at with the collective. I'd be very interested to see how you're sort of thinking about measuring success in all the sort of variety of non-financial ways.
Yeah, it's challenging. Building a marketplace anywhere is challenging, and we're using sort of a staggered approach, right? So we are starting with like senior living and long-term care initially, because that's the market we know really well. But we're starting with networks. So we're forming partnerships with most of the large national associations, right, to make sure that their membership is there, to make sure the membership is present. Again, because of our narrative, it's not a very hard sell for most providers to want to opt in and make sure that their page is optimized and, you know, reflects their brand, et cetera. But we're also starting with, you know, the people who sort of you know, gain from us challenging that old model. So folks like senior advisors, you know, caregiving advocates, area agency on aging, nonprofits, you know, aligning ourselves with them as well too is another way that we're doing that and filling in. As we look to expand and add more of sort of maybe the non-standard providers to the system, it's just a lot of hustle. I mean, we're just trying our best to, again, I think this conversation was very fortuitous. I think understanding what you guys are doing with the collective will probably help in that regard. There's probably a lot of alignment there, in fact. But yeah, I think it's, it's a 2 to 3 year plan at this point. It's just plug away.
And your business model, will that be taking a slice of commission, and will you not therefore also be incentivized to put your favorites at the top of the list?
Yeah, no. So no commissions, no referral fees, no listing fees, none of that at all. The good news for us is we've got a business model that works already with Carely. That obviously for us continues to be our breadwinner, the monthly subscriptions off that business. But I do believe, caregiving.com is certainly a big vision and a big part of our future earnings projections. And a lot of that is going to come through sponsored content. So you can think about us doing maybe a section of content or articles related to a specific topic, and that could be brought to you by XYZ company. Having sort of that sponsored content editorial approach would probably be more than enough for us to sort of support the vision for the company. Beyond that, I do think that we've got an opportunity to create, the first of its kind, maybe a direct to caregiver GPO, where we could leverage the buying power of our audience to get discounts on goods and services that caregivers need. And you could see us sort of doing sort of a typical commission structure that a GPO might have there.
Interesting. So a bit like Linkage is doing for the more the B2B side, taking that to the consumer side.
Yeah, we've been working really closely with Scott at Linkage on that side of the business.
So when this opportunity came up, what was the reaction to the board? What was their sort of biggest concern about you? You've got 4 kids, you're a busy guy, you're running a business. Are they not a bit worried that you're going to jump into this site that's not really making much money and get distracted from your core?
Yeah, it was mixed reviews. I think several of our constituents wanted to see sort of a doubling down on the provider business. And what I mean by that is the AL and senior living sort of focus. But, I respect that. And certainly that side of our business is not going away. Carely, our team is growing. So we're not necessarily taking resources away from one section and putting it in another. We're expanding our team to cover, and the revenues we're generating fully support that. We're close now to cash flow positivity, which is fantastic. But I will say, we've been pretty diligent about how we've raised money. And we've also been really diligent about the people we've brought into the company. Most people believe in the vision and believed in the vision early, and that vision hasn't changed. If anything, we, doubling down on AL and not focusing on the caregiver would have been sort of a detraction from where we ultimately wanted to be always. So yeah, a majority of the board and myself included, really saw this as an opportunity to take, a sort of an accelerated approach to what our ultimate vision has always been. Are there hurt feelings? Maybe, but at the end of the day, we raised money in a very specific way to make sure we always had control, and we fortunately have that. So.
Great. Well, look, I'm excited for your vision. I think it fits nicely into our new topic team that we've got run by Amica, Elevating Caregiving. We're also, which is more on the professional caregiving side, we're also exploring another topic team around family caregiving, which I think will be an even closer fit with a couple of our partners. So I think it'd be a natural link to have you there.
I love the fact that these conversations are happening. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's needed. And and we're having them internationally as well. I was just mentioning a couple of companies in Europe and here now I'm in Australia. There's a lot of quite interesting companies here. So I think you're onto an exciting, adventure and trajectory here. Excited to have you re-engaged. I'm a little disappointed that you not wearing a bright pink shirt that you used to come to our meetings with had Care Monster logo, and now it's a bit more bit more subdued.
Only the OGs know what Care Monster is. That name rarely comes up anymore.
Sometimes I see it on some, like, one of your accounts or something, it pops up, like, what's that? But look, congratulations. Excited to watch this with interest, and it sounds like there's going to be a number of conversations to be had in the coming weeks and months. So good to reconnect, and look forward to watching the progress.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it, man.
That's good.